welcome to another episode of From Ireland to Palestine. We're here today with Jake from Shan Vans. They're a local band that produce a lot of politically charged music, and they're, of course, famous for their solidarity with Palestine. So, Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
So, do you want to tell us a wee bit about the Shan Vans and just sort of the ethos behind the band?
Well, it kind of started as a result of the lads we were jamming for a while, for about 6 months, and we decided that we wanted to write original music with no sort of ideas of going out and playing out live or anything. We just wanted to write some original music for ourselves, where we're doing up to that point where we're doing Paolo Nutini covers and Thin Lizzy covers and honing our, I suppose there's a lot of different musical interests in the band, so we were just playing around with different people's preferred songs and genres, and we kind of landed nicely and that we all agreed rock music was kind of the thing that was constant between us all. And then from that point onwards we've been exploring different styles of rock music, but I suppose I'm the lyricist, so I try and put my sort of perspective, what I see around me, into some of the lyrics, and the lads are very happy with the final products of what we've done so far. So.
And is that all shared between the group? Do you all kind of share the same political perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're all Palestinian solidarity activists, and we would be, I suppose, definitely, hopefully, engaging people around that question. That's the idea behind music and art is fun. It's good crack, and we enjoy it. Just like if you're a sports player or whatever, you enjoy it as a pastime, but there's a deeper level of trying to engage people around ideas and stuff, and that's maybe a result of some musicians that I've been interested in growing up, and some of the other lads, the likes of Rage Against the Machine or Joy Division, or forgive me, but the Sex Pistols back in the early campaign before
Johnny
he
Rotten
turned into
a
a
bit
pure
off the boil.
fascist.
Yeah, he's gone seriously off the boil lately.
Yeah, I've seen him slobbering about kneecap there recently. Just anything to stay in the relevant headlines for that man.
I get the impression there's not much sincerity there. It's just whatever he can get to.
You wonder, was he ever genuine? Actually, when you look back, was it all about his ego and his own view and trying to stay relevant and popular and whatever? But yeah, my sort of interest in music was sparked through Johnny Rotten, actually. Just through being, I suppose, a smick growing up, listening to rave and rap music, and then not having any exposure to rock, really, coming from the Murph, and it was looked upon as something that hippies done, or people who weren't into football or whatever. And then I suppose my late teens, early 20s, I started discovering that music went further than David Guetta for all of his mishaps.
And music's so tribal, isn't it? When you're like a teenager, it's just if you're your mates, it's you like this kind of music and that's it. And if you don't like this music, you're out basically.
Eminem and Tupac was like the standard bearer. You had to know at least a couple of their songs start to finish, or you were ejected from the inner circle. So was it like when you formed it? Was it done with political intent to begin with? Was it like we want to try and get a message out there? I suppose, yeah. I mean, my own personal view of music over the last 20 years, maybe right up until the what I would call the renaissance of kneecap and that generation of people like Fontaines, Lankham, Mary Wallopers, and so on. There was basically like a dearth of connection between music and activism. Literally, and we came through 9/11, the recession, austerity. You would think, given the social circumstances outside of elite circles, everybody else is down and suffering and squalor and poverty, and people are dancing about, singing about how great the club is and all that. So, but it sounds like in its class when you're young and you want to pop it out and whatever. But for me, music there was always another dimension to music for me as art, and then I think that's always been lost at certain times in history. And I grew up in a time where we were hanging on to a Tupac from the 90s who had something to say, Eminem who straddled both worlds. He was critical and whatever, but he also made cracking bangers that you could dance to. So it was kind of like when I started to get politicized through music, I just started looking around for other signs that this was in there and say the mainstream or accessible through some charts or whatever. I think the thing that poignantly stuck out for me was that God Save the Queen was number 1 in the charts in the UK in the 70s, and it was actually redacted out of the chart list. And I was like, fuck, that's kind of like what Kneecap are doing. And so, for me, it was definitely something beyond just like having a bit of crack in music. And I think with the lads, there would be sort of differences in the band regards like how much certain people lean into the lyrics and whatever. Some of our band members, one of them told me recently that like he doesn't really listen to lyrics. He's always been tuned in.
I'm kind of the same actually. Like I was for years. Like I was into like the Manic Street Preachers, and I was really into their lyrics because they were quite political. But a lot of the time it's just purely the tune, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's it. Like I mean, it's for arts, for enjoyment as well. Like so, sometimes it's good to just switch off and not think about Palestine. But for me personally, like I would be myself and another couple of members in the band would be very much into the writing and the history and trying to like infuse that into what's going on now. And but that's the way all bands are. You know, you can't have everybody into the same thing, and that's where I think where the uniqueness of some of the sounds we're starting to create now is coming from people just being totally engaged with the music element.
Well, that one you produced recently, like the one fairly recently this year, the Shan Van, that big project, and it was a larger project than just the song, wasn't it? It was.
It actually started off in July 2023. It was we started writing it. We started writing it as a. I was reading like Frantz Fanon and looking at Africa and the African experience in terms of colonization, and it was like there's a triangulation between Kenya through like Kitson and whatever. He was operating in Ireland, the same colonial sort of generals and whatever, and Palestine. So it was like it started off as an idea. Can we write 3 verses about Ireland, Kenya, and Palestine and show the confluence of colonization and how it like has impacted on a Western European country, an African country, and an Asian country, and to show the breadth of colonization and its impact on culture. And then but obviously then 3 months later, October 7th happened, and we says, look, for the purposes of elevating the Palestinian voice, let's just track the Kenyan project, and we'll probably revisit that again in the future. But and then that was it. It started off as we went into the studio and wrote the demo in a 10-minute take. So we had this like 10-minute demo that we done sort of like off the bat, and trying to like go back and recreate all the parts that were done took a long time, and trying to agree like, you know, how long the song would be, and it ended up being 10 minutes. 10 minutes,
aye.
Like in an age where like everyone wants 5 seconds. I don't know what the hell that was about.
Everyone's like watching 1 minute ones on Instagram. Yeah. But there's like a 5-minute radio edit, isn't there? And then
there's a 5-minute radio edit, and then we had the song written, and we'd planned to go and record it in Dublin, and I put a thing out on our Instagram saying, does any artist want to be involved in a music video, or is a conceptual idea there, but there's nothing in stone. So we're up for discussing with artists, and it turned into 120 plus artists contributing to the music video. So we became art project managers instead of fucking musicians. And that was really fun to do, because the lads learned so much, because like Brendan was managing the logistics, Colin was managing, you know, communication with people, and myself and other band members were kind of doing other work in the background around the idea, the concept of the video, how it would look. We'd never done a music video proper before, so
It's very impressive. Like when you see the whole thing, I watched. I actually I'd heard the radio edit loads of times, but never actually watched the whole thing start to finish. And it is amazing. Like the amount of different artists in it, all the different themes you bring in, like Irish mythology and the link between Ireland and Palestine, and the idea of Palestine being a light to people who were imprisoned here for standing up against the British. It's pretty amazing bit of work. And did it take like almost 18 months then to put the whole thing together?
It took us about 4 or 5 months to write the song, because it was so long and it was so nuanced in places, and there was like it went from being a straight rock song to being sort of like a bit more off step, and then it had a poem at the end, and so it was it was a wee bit. We could have probably broke it down into 2 songs and slightly changed it or whatever and done on the M&B side, but we just says no, we'll stick it out in this format, because I mean, when we wrote it in the room originally, particularly myself and Brendan, the lead guitarist, like he was just doing these class answers to my sort of basic vocal, and that's what gave it I think the potential, I thought at the time, Focus could be alright. Like,
the anthemic quality it has to, it's like an anthem, right?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like a rock anthem, sort of like wee bit like bluesy in parts and whatever. But I suppose, it was just giving myself the space to say a few things and to scream a few things. Just trying to like mirror the feelings inside when we were looking at this genocide every single day. And this was like, obviously, the genocide didn't start on October 7th. I mean, my own personal experience with Palestine is that I'm from Spring Hill. There's been as many Palestine flags painted on the walls by Makara, the artist, and so many flags hanging about the street that it was always there in my mind. And I volunteered in a wee shop in 2014. I think it was Operation Protective Edge. Can't remember.
We got them mixed up. Castled was 2009. Protective Edge, Pillar of Defence.
So in response to that, like
many, you lose track.
It's been 6 massive wars since 2005, so it is hard to keep track. But whatever war that was in 2014, in response to that, the Irish language community set up a wee shop on the Falls Road called Kellier and Column, which is like the song of some bird. I don't know what a column is. I'm assuming it's some sort of Palestinian bird, maybe. So the shop was Kellier and Column, and the point of that shop was to like buy goods directly from the West Bank and Gaza, Zaytun olive oil and dates, essentially, and soaps that burnt your skin, some of them, because they had sage in them, and that's all right. Some people are in that. It burnt the fingers clean off me. But so that was kind of my first real experience with like BDS and like Palestine as something that isn't just a flag beside an Ireland flag. It's something that has a meaning. And then from that point onwards, like I've always been aware of Palestine. So that's why in July 20, it was 2 months after we released our flagship song, our first song, Inside. We started sort of writing the ideas down about Kenya and Ireland and Palestine. And then from that point on, for me personally, I sort of have a wee bit of freedom in the band as the lyricist to articulate and lay out a vision for the message that we're trying to share, which is ultimately a message of decolonisation, and that extends beyond Palestine. We'll talk a wee bit about that if you want, but that's basically why we wrote that song, was partly to do with what was going on in the world and partly to do with the band being aware of what was going on in Palestine and how it connected to Ireland.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting, like how you bring in Irish history, Irish mythology, and it's like a pride. It's an awareness and a promotion of that history of injustice, and the mythology you bring in. And there's a contrast between that and the kind of toxic nationalism you sometimes see. You're bringing that and you're linking it to other peoples around the world and saying that we all have the same kind of struggles. Is that something you're kind of conscious of, like having a kind of an Irish identity which isn't nationalistic or chauvinistic?
Yeah, I mean, Frantz Fanon talks quite a lot about the pitfalls of national consciousness, he calls it, and he talks, and like Jan Allays, we were talking briefly down at Electric Picnic just about Andrew Feinstein's sort of critique of South Africa, what happened after 1989, arms deal, and Mbeki being up to his balls in corruption at the highest level, and Andrew Feinstein going like, this is not what we set out to achieve, we're now we've replaced a black elite from the white elite, and those who are in power of the ANC and control of the ANC are essentially exploiting black South Africans in the same way that the white South African capitalist system was, the apartheid regime. So there's definitely similarities to be drawn in terms of, not necessarily with the post-peace process movement here in a direct comparison, but maybe in the sense of like, if nationalism is elevated above the questions of like socio-economic questions, for example, and then it's given primacy over then that's going to be divisive in a sense, particularly in this place. But no, the pieces are all in flux here in the north. You've got a lot of sentiment growing that the system here, the Stormont system, has failed utterly, and you've got politicians sort of, I think, stepping back and holding their breath and waiting for, ultimately unionism to collapse here, I believe, and then there might be a new prevailing narrative around United Ireland and whatever, but we'll also have to be very conscious that the right-wing maniacs in Dublin who are teaming up with paramilitary leaders in the north are waving tricolours, and they're rallying people around the idea of a flag, which is bullshit. Like, my national identity has nothing to do with the flag. The flag's a part of the story, and it's an interesting part, green, white and orange flag. But it's like, I would identify more with, personally speaking, you know, people from history who have stood up for social causes and you know, tried to make a difference, as opposed to
just waving a flag.
Just waving a flag.
Yeah. And of course, you sing in Irish. That's a big part of what you do, which is kind of an act of rebellion in itself. It shouldn't be, but I mean, the people, you said it's like a Trojan horse for decolonization. Do you? I mean, I think are you involved in your day-to-day life just with Irish generally?
Yes, I work full time outside of the band in community work, Irish language community work, particularly with young people. So my sort of idea is that, you know, education is the key, and that community education done from particular perspectives which put the young people in control and the community in control are probably better ways to do it than, say, the education system proper as it exists in like formal institutionalized education. So yeah, definitely I would be involved in Irish language, what's called like community building outside of the music, but I see it all as connected in a way. Like, it's kind of like, you know, it's one big idea is that, you know, if you can pursue these, you can pursue your like resistance in loads of different ways. I'm lucky enough to do it in a way that I enjoy and a way that pays me. So, I mean, it is possible, and it's more possible now for Irish speakers to gain positions within communities and organisations where they can then start, you know, helping with decision making a wee bit, to decide on better decisions that benefit the community, as opposed to maybe, I don't know, institutional investments or whatever.
Yeah, so it's somewhat giving people a sense that when you're learning Irish, you're reclaiming your identity and you're taking matters into your own hands more generally.
Yeah.
Like what kind of things do you know? Do you notice when people are picking up Irish that they hadn't been involved in that before? They're starting to think more critically generally.
I've a wee bit of history in youth work, specifically for the Irish, and I work with Liam from the ECAP. We work together in the same youth club, and there's I suppose in the context of youth work. Irish language youth work, it's trying to establish itself as like a sector within mainstream youth work, which is dominated by obviously English language, as a verbal, the acoustic, dominant acoustic. But within these, I suppose what we would call fledgling organisations, youth groups that have been set up post Good Friday Agreement, post College to First Year, which is the Irish language secondary school, which are all embedded in areas of economic deprivation, and largely all of these youth clubs are connected to schools and to the wider community infrastructure. So they're quite unique in that sense, that they don't copy the model that, you know, maybe a standalone English speaking youth club would have followed. And in that there you have, I see this phenomenon where young people, like we're youth workers, so we're role models essentially. Young people look up to you, and I've this way that I would practice and encourage other youth workers who speak Irish to practice with young people is, our kids are growing up in a society which is 99.9% dominated by English and by and large an Anglo-Irish culture of like football and British television and, you know, Love Island, so to speak. and you're looking at so our kids are kind of coming at the language from the perspective of having the experience of it as a formal thing in school, and then they're coming into the community and they're going to youth clubs and they're seeing these other adults talking Irish. But I suppose what our approach is, you'll speak Irish back to the young people. They're still essentially colonised. All of us are colonised, and you're dealing with a reality where young people are like living most of their lives through English. So they come into that club and they meet the youth worker, and the youth worker starts talking back in Irish to them. What we noticed, and it's a rule of thumb, it's not a science and maybe warrants a bit of research or whatever, but young people when they're about 15, 16, 17 will start answering you back in Irish without you having ever told them that speaking English back to me is wrong. You might get that in school from a teacher who says, like, you know, speak Irish, you'll get detention if you don't speak Irish. It's a punitive kind of approach within a formal institution, but informal youth work lends itself to just being a space where Irish is normalised first, and then the young people will choose to speak it more often than not, if not like exclusively. They'll choose to speak it when they're sort of at that age where they've considered like their identity a wee bit, and they're
I think that's what it is. Like, I would have noticed that when I was a teenager, you would have noticed people around 14, sort of 15, they go from being kids with no obvious identity to doubling down on this identity. And when I was growing up, it was a kind of sectarian identity. People would switch from, you know, barely being aware of that to when they get to 14, 15.
heels dug in.
Your heels dug in, yeah. You think, you think, okay, who am I going to throw my lot in with? It's, you know, it's presumably whatever your friends or whatever your family have been doing. So that's a toxic form of it, but what you're describing is something much more positive then.
It's just that I think it comes from, like, you know, that it's not you're not trying to force the young people to speak Irish. Essentially, we all as a nation were forced to speak English, and the results of that were that people became totally alienated from their identity and alienated from, you know, their sense of history, mythology, stories, songs, whatever stuff that we're trying to like bring back in through the Shan Vans and whatever. But people here generally have very little understanding or knowledge of Irish and the depth of it and what it can mean to you if you engage with it. And kids who are exposed to at least Irish language youth work, who are, rather than it being a formal subject, they're doing like bowling, but they're talking Irish when they're doing it. Or in the case of kneecap, they're doing rapping, but they're just talking Irish. So it's kind of like, it's not necessarily that you're doing it you're not politically motivated to use Irish for the purpose of indoctrinating people into speaking Irish. You're doing it because you're an Irish speaker.
Yeah.
You see the world in Irish and you want to talk about the world in Irish, and the result of that can be that you may encourage people to come towards Irish, but it's certainly not the primary reason for using Irish for us. And I think I've definitely heard DJ Provey talk about that at some level as well, in terms of it being, you know, the language is just the language that we use. We just happen to speak that language, and people are like, "Oh, you're just using the language for, you know,
to make a point." Yeah,
no, I'm just using the language.
No, I've heard him say that they did a wee interview with Jeremy Corbyn in a wee cafe. So I saw them do it, and he asked them, you know, what's, and they just said, "Oh, this is just the language we spoke at home." So obviously we're gonna.
We speak it. I would speak it 60 to 70% of my life. My parents, my family, my work, and then I get home and I'm raising my daughter in Irish, so I'll be speaking it to her too. And it's just about normalising it really, and that's the act of decolonisation is there. It's in that, and people just wanting to discover where the language came from, what connection it has to them. Like every name. Podrick, our street names, our city names, Belfast, Antrim, Ulster, they're all Irish words. What the fuck do they mean? If I wasn't an Irish speaker, being a curious person, I'd be like, what does that mean? Like, I'm from Takamona, Shankill, I'm from Rathcoole. They're all Protestant areas with like
anglicised names.
Names, but like even the geography of those places are linked to the Irish word. So the Shankill or Eaton Derry, Eadan and Dura, which means like the brow of the oak grove. So like you just know that there was probably a forest here when you were young. You know, these wee things that some people find interesting.
Yeah, and that kind of rootlessness is a useful tool for capitalism, I think, as well. If you can detach people from their roots, detach people from their own identity, and they just become little atomised consumers. Sorry?
Send them to the high street.
Send them to the high street, yeah. None of that has its own identity. It's all generic corporate things. And so you can think that kind of process of erasure has another use as well.
Yeah, big time. It's like imaginifying everything.
Exactly,
and talk about communism.
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing. Yeah, I remember, and I studied to play translations when I was at school. I don't know if you've heard of that. Brian Friel play. It's about the process of erasing all names and like how they were trying to work out, okay, how can we anglicise this name or that name? That's an interesting.
You have tons of Charlestowns and, you know, all over Ireland. You know, all named after, you know, you've Shaftesbury Square. Shaftesbury's an interesting one. The Shaftesbury family own Lough Neagh. And they're currently dredging it and abandoning it, and it's poisoning the landscape all around it. That loch is like one of the most significant pieces of geography in Irish mythology, and particularly in Ulster. And it's just dying right now, and it's dying because of colonial legacy and lack of I suppose, well, not a lack of anything, it's absentee landlordism, the same issue that caused the mass emigrations around the famine in Ireland. It's the same ideology, and yeah, that's what I was saying about that song that we picked. We decided that we would essentially look at different perspectives of colonialism while drawing it back into Ireland. So, because not a lot of people here understand even what colonisation is. Like,
what does it actually mean practically?
And it wasn't something like Hillary Clinton says colonisation was something that happened 200 years ago. Get over it. It's kind of like, right, okay, we're trying to get over it. Yeah. So this is what we're doing. We're doing music and art, and we're talking about it, and we're experiencing. We're trying to help others experience, culture in a way that exposes them to the story of colonisation, because it's definitely not 200 years ago, and it's definitely not over. It's just changed its modus operandi.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, the most blatant form of it is largely gone colonisation, like genocidal colonisation, apart from the example of so-called Israel. So I mean, like, colonial erasure can happen very slowly over 800 years or whatever in Ireland, or it can happen very quickly, like it's happening in Palestine at the moment.
Or, like, for example, some of the companies invested in the Amazon, what they're doing is like destroying entire cultures at a rate unfathomable. Like, it can't even be calculated, I don't think, because they're destroying that much land. There could be small tribal villages with languages that are thousands of years old, and practices and understandings of medicine maybe that could help revolutionise parts of the developed world, so to speak, and it's just being destroyed for timber and control of, I would imagine, some key resources under the timber.
Yeah, it might have improved slightly under Lula, but it's still going on. You've actually had a role sort of taking well-known people around Ireland when they're here, like so Greg Stoker and people like that. Mo Hams, who's a well-known influencer. What do they make of it when they come over here? Are they struck by?
Greg was an interesting one. Greg knew a lot more about Irish history than I did for some. Well, Greg's
he studied it, hasn't he?
He studied colonisation, decolonial practices, something like that. He studied, so he knew the whole crack about the peelers, and he knew about the inception of the colonial police force here and how it was used as a model and exported around the world. It's really interesting when you look at today's sort of security infrastructure and market here in the north. It's huge. Recently found out about Usto connections back to managing and digital data coming out of Jerusalem. Like, when we were in Jerusalem, we seen the cameras. At the time, we did not know that these cameras were at some level connected to software development in the north of Ireland. So the tentacles run really deep.
Yeah. So you've actually been, like, so you're just talking there about being in the West Bank. Like, what was that actually like? To talk a bit about that.
It was a wee bit surreal. I didn't know it was going, and then next thing it was going, and we were invited along with a group of creative influencers, it was called, or whatever. I detest the word influencer. But yes, creative influencer programmer or so was the name of the project. We went over with about 10 of us, 5 from Ireland and 5 from different parts of Britain. And the thing that struck me was getting into the place. We'd go in through another country, and we'd sort of mask what the real reason why we were going. The real reason why we were going was to talk to Palestinians and to find out what, if anything, we could do in the West, given our privileges and freedoms that they couldn't do in the West Bank, for example, or in Gaza. I mean, the prevailing message was targeting of universities, ramping up of BDS, and targeting media, essentially, given their role in democracy, supposedly. So it was a mission. We looked at it like a mission, like where we're going over there. We were there as Christians from the West. To visit the birthplace of Jesus Christ, and so on. That's generally the story. That's
a standard one, yeah.
When we arrived in Jordan, we came through the King Hussein Gate, and we were delayed for hours. And then when we eventually got through to the customs area that you're where you actually officially enter Israel. You're entering the West Bank. So how you enter in Israel, first the question of 1967 borders. But does
it actually say that? Does it actually say, like, is there signs saying?
Well, it's Israeli border police with Israeli Star of David's flags on their, with Israeli names, processing you at the entry point to Palestine. So at some level, there's, complicity there between the Jordanian government and the Israeli government, and we know the connection back to Britain and Jordan and so on. But we would think that was, one of those random spot checks, that tend to happen when there's someone of colour or someone from a different ethnic background travelling through. So out of the entire group, the only Palestinian travelling with us, whose family was originally from Nablus, I believe, they were stopped and held for extra questioning for an extra hour. And that was just, again, that was my first experience of, look, this is just exactly what it says in the tin. It's a colonial process here. She's being screened because she's Palestinian, essentially, and we're being let in because we're white. And that's racism, and that's at the heart of the Israeli project. So when we arrived in, then you come in through the custom, the border crossing, and you walk out into the open space where the bus collects you, and on the far end of one of the hills that overlook the customs port, there's just a giant Star of David, like, etched into the side of the mountain, and it's just kind of like, just remember where you are. So that was a Palestinian mountain in Palestine, outside of the gates of the border building or whatever it's called, and that was just really intimidating, like, because it's like a reminder that you're now entering Israel, not the West Bank, and
but they're very deliberately probably to say for anyone coming in,
psychological, I would imagine, because it would be a lot of humanitarian workers and, I suppose, Arab people coming in through that gate, because it's on the Jordanian side. So it's just like a wee subtle reminder. And then you come out of that port and you're traveling towards Jerusalem, and you're just met with, like, just mountains of settlements. So it was scary, because it was like, we're going into Palestine here, but, like, where are the Palestinians? And then so when we eventually arrived in Jerusalem, kind of like being in a film. It was like, what? The Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, just the way that all the town, like, it looks like an ancient city built on a mountainside. It just was really class and experience. You imagine, like, how many, like, people from the past have had that experience of going to Jerusalem from the West. So it was pretty unique and special, and daunting all at once. So it was meeting 3 to 4 Palestinian groups each day. That was the real eye opener as to the level, because we're told and we talk constantly about Gaza, and rightfully so. But what seems to be tightening now is the Zionist grip around UNRWA in Jerusalem. That was the takeaway. We met the director of communications from UNRWA, who basically just told us, like, the purpose of this. If you look at the early escapades into Gaza post October 7th, it was a lot of the narrative was around corrupt UN bodies, and eventually that led to
they're infiltrated by Hamas,
France and Britain, like, withdrawing their funding from UNRWA overnight without any due process or investigation, just because Israel said they should do that. So for me, that all, when Fakhri, who was the director of communications, he was UNRWA's director in Gaza for a while, and then in the West Bank after that. So when he was explaining this, he was just like, look, the crack is that they're getting rid of UNRWA because within UNRWA is the only legal rate of return. And if they can get that gone, then they can defund UNRWA. Effectively, the only social services group operating in education, healthcare and community within Palestine, then you remove the lifeline, drives Palestinians further into poverty, and you also remove the right of return, which is the reason why Hamas and its consecutive resistance groups have fought against the Israeli state using armed resistance, is because it's enshrined. The right of return is enshrined, and it's never been facilitated.
No, that's it's in the UN Resolution 242 or whatever, from 1967 or so, and Yeah, I mean, clearly that was the goal of the I mean, that was something Israel would always say, is that they, particularly with Gaza, is no independent development. You know, you can't have any sort of private sector development or anything like that. People building up the economy for themselves. It has to be only foreign aid for things like UNRWA. And then that obviously creates a very easy single point of failure, where if you destroy that, you just wreck everything.
And that was his, you know, essentially verbatim. His warning was like, Gaza is a tragedy. Gaza is a Holocaust. It's a genocide. It's also a very useful distraction from the West Bank. And what we've seen, I have friends who have family in Tulkarem, and even where we visited, we sort of stayed within the safe triangle, which was kind of like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Ramallah. And outside of that, like, some family members were saying, if I want to see my family from Tulkarem, I have to travel for 14 hours. It's an hour away, you know, and that's what you're talking about. The myth of the West Bank, it is essentially an occupied, it's Greater Israel de facto, and Gaza is about to become the same, minus any of the Palestinians who are, you know, those Palestinians in the West Bank who are causing all this trouble by just wanting to live. If they get rid of the Gazans from Gaza, then they don't have that element to worry about. And then I believe it'll be Greater Israel, for want of a better word, unless people in the West utilise their privileges and freedoms through BDS and direct action, such as Palestine action to press on these pressure points now. Like, we can't wait, so now is the time.
Yeah, and government's taken action as well. And it was Spain did some things today, but still nowhere near enough. It was just things like bringing in an arms embargo on Israel. Like, that should have happened. Well, it should have happened long before October the 7th. So it's too little. I'd say it's too little, too late. But it's still not enough.
It's still not enough. But there's been more headway made through this phenomenon of the criminalisation of direct action. There's been a lot of headway, I think, or at least for me anyway, from my own individual activist perspective here. I think that there's something in this. There's something in the occupation of complicit organisations. There's something in the escalation of tactics and the stuff that BDS are doing every single day. The awareness raising, even among staff members in the likes of B&M and Home Bargain, and Sainsbury's. Like, I would hope that there's impacts being made there, but also I believe that we might need to see in the aftermath of 400 to 500 people being arrested in London just yesterday, we might need to see just a few more Palestine actions, because the act of what they done isn't. It's being, their organisation has been prescribed as a terrorist organisation, but the acts that they engaged in are not terrorist acts per se.
Well, they changed it, and that's one of the controversies, isn't it? About how they changed the Terrorism Act to include property damage.
Well, this is it. I think this is going to be an Achilles heel for them, because it's not. You can understand how support for a prescribed terrorist organisation like this is an act of terrorism under the law, but it's not an act of terrorism in the real world, where acts of terrorism are politically motivated to cause direct harm, usually violent harm, if not like at some level a material impact. The material impact on Elbit Systems. I mean, Elbit Systems are the company that Palantir is invested in and is working with closely in terms of the Israeli state and providing the Israeli state with the data that they need to murder Palestinians. Yeah. These are the same people who met in secret with the British government. Elbit Systems, our good friend Low Key, has exposed the life clean out of that one.
They lobbied to get Palestine action.
To get Palestine. And that to me is like, okay, they're shitting themselves. Yeah. They're afraid. They're afraid of what these kids, these largely university kids in England, are doing. And I'm like, we better add in Ireland. What about Palestine Action Ireland? What about something? Yeah.
And there is one there, the ones who've been doing some Palestine Action there who've been doing some things in Shannon. But I mean that's probably the only way things are going to change. And what you were saying there beforehand about, number about how the state will just respond in this way when it's desperate. And I think that people can see that. I think that people see what happened in London, that it's just an act of desperation. And it's going to expose them, because if it's just like pensioners and even retired army majors and things getting arrested, and it's the kind of people who the mainstream are going to start asking questions about why they're the ones who are getting carted off by police.
Priests, I've seen some elderly priests, and as we were discussing before, disabled people, and it's not a good look for the people who are claiming to uphold democracy and protect private property rights and protect individuals and whatever, but what they're doing is they're causing harm to people who are seeing a genocide and wanting to voice democratically and peacefully their disdain of the fucking genocide. They're being lifted and they're being put in the back of paddy wagons and they're being brought to the colonial. What I think Greg Stoker illuminated me to this amazing expression called the colonial boomerang.
That's right. Yeah, I heard that.
Which is when the colonizer and the empire is done with its violence overseas, so to speak, and it's installed its institutions, and its institutions are extracting the data and extracting the resources, and people in the imperial centre, aka here in Belfast, in London, start to talk about this, then the colonial practices that are practiced in the foreign land are then practiced on the locals, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So it is an extension of colonisation, although we may want to call it something else, police brutality, authoritarianism or whatever, but it's an extension of colonialism large.
Yeah, it's the same tactics that have been used being brought back home to be used on the metropole population, 100%. I was going to get on to your visa being taken away, because we just talked about you going to the West Bank. You recently got the badge of honour now of having your visa taken away, so you can't travel to Palestine.
No, again, I can't. No. It did though. It cleared it up. It said due to a change in circumstances. So I'm now a lot more aware of why I can't go. And being facetious, the basically the one line in the email, due to a change of circumstances, you are no longer, or this is no longer eligible. Right. Your access has been denied and revoked. So
the change of circumstances, they didn't know who you were before, now they do know. That's basically it.
I would imagine there's been a targeting of Irish people, so it mightn't be specific to me. It might be that they're just working through previous Irish people who had visited with Irish passports, and I just maybe happen to be one of those people. Or it could be targeted in the sense of we have a bit of a platform online and we're being vocal about what was seen, and we're sharing videos. Every time we share the videos, they get removed, but we just share them again and they get loads of hits and then they get removed. So it's actually given us the ability to share it more frequently. So thank you, Palantir. Great.
Do you actually get the Instagram actually take down your videos at times?
Yes, they flag a lot of content, particularly ourselves, Tag Hickey, another couple of activists I know in the south who have been back and forward from Palestine, have been having our pages massively restricted, and have had collaborations removed. We've been removed from people who have collaborated with us without us authorising that. So like say an activist group in Berlin or whatever shares something and tags us as a collaborator. There's been instances in the past where we go to our page and we're no longer in it as a collaborator, and we've contacted them and they've made us aware that they didn't remove us. So I would imagine there's some level of screening or censorship happening there regards like what you're putting out, and whether it goes against community standards. That's usually we screenshot all of the warnings. It's like your post goes against community guidelines. Probably been reported by people who are Zionists. If your post gets reported a certain amount of times and it's flagged as, I think it's called like politically motivated or whatever, then you can be screened. We had our ability to go live removed for a year, so we can no longer go live. We used to come to all the BDS stuff and go live and like talk about what was happening, and that's been removed. So, fuck them. Don't care really. Like at the end of the day, is if what we're doing is warranting censor from genocidal imperialist, then what we're doing is probably going to stand the test of time.
Yeah. That's a reminder we need to create alternative platforms. I was hearing
100%.
the fellow filmmaker who did some of Al Jazeera's best recent documentaries, like the Labour Files and the one about October the 7th. He was, he said he was under the illusion for a while that he could change mainstream media from the inside, but he's come to the conclusion now that that's just a waste of time, and the only way to do it is through alternative media or alternative social media like up scrolls is
just looking at it there now, yeah.
Instagram.
And also like around platforms like this and spaces like this where like if someone wants to, they can engage with a bit of reality as opposed to the manufactured propaganda machine that there's several layers of bullshit you have to get through to even get the source of the story, never mind whether the source was telling the truth or not. So we're platforms like this, and even obviously the likes of Colonial Outcasts and Thai Kickies platforms, and you're seeing a space open up on the left for dialogue.
There's a massive new ecosystem for all that. Just moving before we finish, it's coming up to about an hour now. What do you make of, like, we were recently down at Electric Picnic there, and you're probably at music festivals all the time. It was my first time doing sort of the politics side of a music festival. It was kind of just interesting to see it. Like, it was very well organised, lots of like good bands, good talks and things, but I suppose not that well attended when you look at the size of the festival overall, and you know, maybe a bit of preaching to the converted. Like, and I was just looking at, it was like two very high profile activists in England, Matt Kennard and Frank McGuinness is Irish, obviously, talking at a festival in England. And again, not many people listening to two really excellent, highly prominent figures on the left. What's your sense of the usefulness of like these events and music festivals?
I mean, they are part of the larger structure of capitalism, and therefore I would imagine they're at the beholden to and at the whim of people who aren't necessarily concerned about politics in the sense of raising awareness around social issues. So my cynical view is that they're put in there in order to create an illusion that you know spaces like Electric Picnic have some sort of socially conscious value system behind what they're doing. So it's just, as you say, you know, if you really care, you know, put someone on the main stage between acts to talk about it, like the way Glastonbury, maybe. I'm not claiming Glastonbury have a socially aware, value-driven system or whatever, but they did put Jeremy Corbyn on the main stage between acts, I believe in 2019, and we're all singing. I was nearly singing along at the time, but the reality is that the entire, it's all shit, it's all corrupt, it's all part of the global system of control and economics and neoliberalism, so to speak, and it's all about, I suppose, for me anyway, it's about elevating the brands that sponsor the thing as opposed to the artists, which is why you've got the Heineken stages and the Coca-Cola stages, and you know, you don't really hear much in the way of promoting ideological, political, social causes in the advertising of Electric Picnic. You would have had to maybe scroll through several pages to find what was happening in that tent that we were in, the Palestinian Solidarity tent. But again, it's away at the back of the festival, beside the fun fair, around a corner.
Sort of off the side,
some trees. It's like put the hippies in the forest.
And maybe get drunk and got lost to actually find it, just sort of tripped over it,
So that to me is just like, I mean, but all power to Global Green and the organisers behind it, because in the context of being sidelined and, you know, pigeonholed into a small section, it was a vibrant space of discussion and dialogue. But it's like what Noam Chomsky says around like democracy and debate. He's like, you know, the limitations are in place. And it's lively within those limitations. So you could almost like superimpose that on the Electric Picnic. They'll allow very broad critical debate within that small space, but it's off to the side.
So it's carefully restricted.
Carefully restricted. So that's my cynical view. My positive view of it is, you know, that the owner of Electric Picnic came out a number of days beforehand and stated publicly that he wasn't going to censor NECAP, which he didn't have to do. He didn't have to say that publicly. But it has came to the fore that the overarching, so Electric Picnic is a subsidiary of Live UK Nations, Live Nations UK, whose CEO was one of the scumbags who signed the letter in October, post October 7th, from the industry perspective, you know, basically saying go ahead and do what you need to do to stop Hamas, essentially. And that has been the resulting in a genocide. Now he's the CEO of a corporation that's over like multiple festivals like Electric Picnic, and the owner of Electric Picnic himself coming out and defending Kneecap, and then Kneecap being given that space at 3:30 in the day, still given that space on the main stage. And I'm pretty sure the owner knew what they were going to say when they were on stage, given what they've said on previous stages. So I mean, it's a bit of a grey one for me. I mean, we will probably go back to it unless something major comes out about the owner in regards to even the corporate affiliations. If there's maybe people could look at that actually.
We discussed it a bit ourselves. We okayed it with the BDS before going. You know, like, what do you think of this? Because there is Live, like you said, it's owned by Live Nation, and Live Nation have an Israeli branch where they're putting on concerts in Israel. Although almost no concert in Israel, if you actually look at it, no one's going to Israel, which is brilliant, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's to some extent the main problem is like how consolidated, you know more about this than me, how consolidated the music industry is in terms of the ownership of ticketing and festival promotion. It's massively consolidated as far as I understand it.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, there is definitely a bit of a glimmer of hope in this whole what we're calling like the new Irish Renaissance or whatever it's called, where there are bands who are signed to major labels who are publicly advocating messages that artists who were traditionally signed to major labels could never dream about saying, and that to me is something that may be a fart in the wind and be gone tomorrow, but it's here now and it needs to be exploited by artists. And if there are labels out there who are interested in artists who are willing to be clever about how they say what needs to be said but still say it, then there's artists out there who are willing to do that, and it's just about trying to help those people find each other. And that's kind of like gives me a wee bit of hope that music is, music has always been a tool of the elites. Let's not beat around the bush here. Like, it's always been, even the punk movement came through its sort of iterations, but you can debate till the cows come home what social impact any of that had, or did it just lead to like Duran Duran having a few number ones or whatever. But for me, in the Irish context, particularly speaking as a member of our band, like, we see the utility of music being way more than like sustaining us in our careers. We all work full time outside the band. Like, we don't need the band to survive. We want to make the music because we believe that music can help change and shape that discourse in a way, and can leave a legacy of showing other artists that art isn't completely commodified and dead. It can be used as a weapon against injustice.
Do you think there's a role for like music being used almost directly as part of activism? I think of like the Palestine action film. Maybe you saw it, To Kill a War Machine, which now you can't watch anymore. It's ridiculous. It's kind of censorship. But I mean, I remember people coming out of that, the screening of that, just really fired up because of the combination of music with the footage of the actions they were doing. There's videos we've done, which we put on live for people. Like, we did this tour of Scotland, and we had some of our videos where we got like upbeat music playing to some of our actions, and you could see people coming out of that fired up. Do you think there's a potential for, I don't know, yourselves or anyone doing more of that kind of thing, directly linking your music to suggested actions, or like trying to inspire people that way?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there is, and I mean, it's hard to find other examples in recent history where that's been done. But like, if you're looking at that song that we sang in Electric Picnic, we done a version of The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And we sort of like, so that to me is an example of like, that was in the context of Black Panthers, Black liberation, a satirical piece really about how invested capitalism is in the revolution and making it
not at all
corporate or non-existent essentially. So yeah, I mean, I personally, it's my prerogative to fucking use that music for that purpose, as well as a personal music journey for myself, enjoying it and having fun, but really trying to push on buttons with music is definitely something that we're trying to do. But to extend it to what you're saying is like connecting it directly to activism. Absolutely, aye, of course it should be. And it'd be interesting to discuss at some level how that could be done essentially. But I mean, you're seeing how again, just to refer back to the messaging that was shared at Coachella or any of the other major stages. Where like I've went to see NECAP a couple of times recently, and they are informing people as per the involvement of US.
That's right,
foreign aid in Israel, and so essentially they were using their platform to specifically direct, in a subtle way, American youth to question their country's complicity in a genocide, but it's not really directing them towards a specific action. Maybe the result of that may be people decide to do BDS, but could it be a bit more explicit, is what you're saying?
Could you like have like NECAP put up, did that when they went to Electric Picnic? They had stuff about what the Irish government's complicit in.
Yeah.
Could you have like again footage of Irish activist groups in the background playing while they're singing or whatever?
Why not?
I mean, maybe that's
Why
one.
not?
Yeah.
I think we're unique here in Ireland, where I think there's been a long and celebrated and colourful history of music and resistance.
Yeah.
The Man Behind the Wire, Come Out Your Black and Tans, being two really poignant examples of songs that impacted me and helped me understand like what history meant here. And then we'll have this whole new wave of like young people who are blending anti-genocidal rhetoric. We're fucking taking drugs and having a crack, and that's music.
Yeah. Well, just for like one final question before we wrap up. It's again just about the like how important music is. Really, like, or relative to the politicians themselves. There's a American podcaster, Ben Burgess, sort of Marxist podcaster, who wrote a book called "Cancelling Comedians While the World Burns." It's like about that the process of people on the left focusing too much on, what this comedian says or what that musician says. I suppose the question is like, and it's the same thing now for Palestine. People fixate a lot on whether this artist has backed Palestine or what they've said. I'm just wondering, like, what do you think? Do you think that's worthwhile, or do you think people should be spending their time more on what the people with real power do, the politicians? What do you think the responsibility of the musicians is, and what's the responsibility of activists in terms of what they call out?
Well, I mean, for me, the question is like a question about art and what the role of art in like a society should be, and for me, it's like it should be about reflecting society back in a way, obviously. So like artists and music and film and independent, a lot of this stuff when it's done independently, it can touch on truths that those who are maybe invested in by corporations and labels and whatever can't necessarily or don't have the freedom to do. But we particularly believe that art it's the role of the artist. It's kind of like the role of the satirist in Irish history. I mean, if you look at the way that the Gaelic sort of systems ran, the satirist had like almost as high a social value as kings and chiefs, because they were used to point out to the chorus or the masses times when the chiefs or those in power were being hypocritical and abusing power, and they used humour and song and poetry to do that, and by doing that they decreased the social value of the chief, which then some sort of like restorative justice element to that, if you get me, in a weird way. It was kind of like the threat of the jester was that he will make a fool out of you.
I think like comedy is very powerful, because not only like if you can make the argument through comedy, then you can also humiliate the target as well. So it has a sort of dual function.
And I think that's again where NECAP have put their finger on that pressure point, is that it's a parody skit of these three people who the lads aren't actually, some of their characters like they're parody or whatever, but I mean they're very intentional in what they're doing, using comedy and humour and satire to expose the bullshit of the system that we're now all forced to live in. My parting shot would be that like art music's just one part of that. I mean, podcasts, art, drawn paintings, people who create things with their hands, and then also like theatre of the oppressed type stuff, where you can go and create a social situation and educate people using like street theatre and stuff. Like, it's way out there, but I mean the potentiality with art is limitless regards its ability to hold power in check. It's just about finding creative ways of doing that, and I think we've no other choice but to use everything, including art, to like resist Palantir and resist
And all the
the
rest of them.
allure of, this bullshit, existence.
Yeah. I suppose it's just a question of everyone just bringing their own skills to bear on this and doing what they can. But obviously, you're very much doing that with the Shan Vans, and we appreciate you coming on, talk to us.
Meet up with his.
Cheers.
The genocide will be televised. The genocide will show you pictures to traumatise you and legitimise its war crimes. The genocide will show you 43 minutes of carja. No prequel, no fucking sequel. 43 minutes. Shin Vans. The genocide will not call you human, it will call you animals. The genocide will not call you hostages, it will call you captives and terrorists. The genocide will show you pictures of your leaders pointing at roofs. It'll show you pictures of your leaders beside war criminals as bombs and hate destroy the hopes and the dreams of millions. Irish dreams, Palestinian dreams, human fucking dreams. And you, Carja, you'll all be expected to lie down. Not to dream, not to rest, but to yield. And you, Carja, you'll be expected to forget about what you see on the screen. But you can't, because the genocide will be televised. The genocide will be televised. The genocide will be televised. The genocide will colonize your brain. The genocide will tell you that armed resistance is terrorism. The genocide will tell you that red paint is terrorism. The genocide will immortalize Palestine action. The genocide has been televised. And we're keeping all the fucking receipts. Every last one of them. We saw the body of Mohammed Salama. We heard the voice of Hind Rajab. We read the beautiful poetry of Rafat Al-Arir. Yeah? Everybody read it? Yeah? Yeah. Well, if you didn't, you can go back and read it. Because every last one of you bastards are in our scope. Every last complicit organisation, every last complicit politician, you're in the fucking crosshairs. And this time, it's different. Because the genocide will be televised. The genocide will be televised. The genocide will be televised. Thank you very much.